Howdy, y'all. The conservatives have a hero who was pontificating around the time I was born, who's a fucking idiot. His name was William F. Buckley. A lot of modern conservatism comes from this man, using the term very, very loosely. But he was a fucking idiot. Now, the point of this is going to be about the difference between small government and limited government, which are very different things, but you conservatives get it twisted constantly. But let me start off with a quote from William F. Buckley. Y'all have heard this, but I'm going to say it again anyway, just to get the flavor in your mouth, see how absolutely moronic this man was. A conservative is one who stands athwart history yelling "stop" at a time when no one is inclined to do so or to have much patience with those who so urge. You don't stand athwart history, it's going to happen. You don't try to block progress, it's going to happen, and even if you are trying to block it, there is no reason ever for that. Humans make problems, fix problems, which makes more problems, which we fix, which makes more problems, etc. And this has been going on as long as we have history. With this attitude, we'd have never got to the caves, let alone got out of them. This is just plain stupid. But William Buckley was also a big, big proponent of limited government. The one thing that I agree with him on. But somewhere along the line, and this happened very much in my lifetime, in my adult lifetime, because even back in the 1990s, conservatives were talking about limited government, not small government. So let's look at this. Limited government is something like what we have. A constitution defining the limits of what can be done. A small government is what y'all are trying for, where you've got one man who is the government. That's not limited, that's monarchy. You may recall, those of you who have the wit to remember, the year 1776 was important in our history. A guy named Thomas Jefferson, a very flawed man who had a brilliant mind nevertheless, wrote down this thing called the Declaration of Independence, wherein we asserted that we do not need a monarch. A guy named Thomas Paine, also flawed, less so in my opinion, but also equally brilliant, put out a pamphlet called Common Sense, where he said, the divine right of kings frequently gives us an ass rather than a lion. Y'all remember this? About the same time, we had a guy named John Stuart Mill and another one named John Locke, who were putting forth the liberal philosophy, yes, liberal philosophy, that led to modern conservatism, also to modern liberalism, because the left-right thing came from the French Parliament, where the left was the people and the right was the monarchy. Let it sink in. This is all real. You can verify it very easily. So what's the difference? A limited government has rules. The government can do this and it can't do that. For us, we have a constitution that defines those rules to a very limited extent. It gives a broad painting of what the powers are and what they are not. And a Supreme Court that interprets them. And I'll use the term parliament. We generally say Congress, but the combined one, we can call it parliament or a parliamentary system or something very similar to that. Our Congress and Senate, which pass the legislation, and an executive which executes those laws, not makes them, not a ruler. The president is more like a CEO, to use your parlance, a leader, if you will, the man whose oath says to faithfully execute the laws of the United States and to defend its Constitution. Can you really say your man's done that? Any of your men? In living memory? The last one I can think of is Dwight D. Eisenhower. And that was a little before I was born, and I am 57 years old almost. Closest you came was Reagan. Anyway, we are a nation of approximately 350 million people. In order to maintain a nation of that size, it is literally impossible to have a small government. You can have a whole bunch of small governments and no longer be a nation. which I think is what some of you want. I mean, let's face it, I understand a lot of the deeper philosophy. I come from the anarcho capitalist background, and I still think it's a good system. Later, we're not ready. We are not social enough in the United States to handle unfettered individualism. I'm not going to go into a great deal of depth on that right now because, frankly, it's going to take a long time. It took me 10 years to adequately, in my own mind, answer the question that I used to be asked when I was advocating for anarcho-capitalism. How do we get from here to there? The answer kept coming up: big government, leading to a structure where the individual is empowered enough to become more individual, become more pro-social, and able to operate without a huge legal structure. Now you can imagine that's anathema to an anarchist. It's not an answer I like. But no matter how you work the equation, that's how it comes down. We are not ready for anarchism. Anarchy, properly understood, is not chaos. But sudden anarchy, such as caused by the collapse of a government, yeah, that's chaos. And that's what y'all are aiming for. In order to make this government work, it has to be large. In order to maintain our freedoms, it has to be limited. It has to do certain things and not do certain others. Luckily, in its opening remarks, it tells us what those things are. The preamble to the Constitution is not a suggestion. It's not flowery words. To use modern parlance, it's the mission statement. We are to try to build a more perfect union by promoting the general welfare, providing for the common defense, providing systems of justice. These are important. Everything that follows is put in place to effectuate those few words. That is a limited government. By design, a large one. It has to be. Think it through, people. Limited and small do not have the same meaning. Small is simply size. Even in the face of a monarchy, where the government is literally embodied in one man, the truth of it is it would have to be a large government apparatus in order to work for anything bigger than a small village. Kingdoms tended to be self-limiting because of this. When they got bigger than that, they became called empires, where the king was more of a figurehead. Yes, he was an absolute ruler in a lot of senses, given his power, but who executed the power? It wasn't the king himself or the emperor. It couldn't be. Leave discourse on voluntary servitude sometime. Etienne Poete. This used to be pretty much required reading on the right, back when y'all espoused reading. In the modern world, I am about as far left as you can get in the United States. I took a slight step to the left from anarchism. Think that through. The Overton window has moved so far in the United States that you could probably define Hitler as a leftist. Let it sink in.